Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you for giving us the privilege of being alive today in 2020. It's been a most unusual year, but we know that you are still on the throne, even though it looks like things are out of control. So today, Lord, as we open your book, we pray for the presence of your Spirit, that you would inspire and guide us and encourage us to holy living, to being representatives, ambassadors of you. In Jesus' name, amen. So we are taking a look at the companion passage to the one that Paul wrote to the Romans in chapter 13. This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verses 6 and 7. I'm going to start with verse 4, actually. You, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day, the day referring to the coming of Jesus, would overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night or of the darkness, therefore let us not sleep as others do. But let us watch and be sober, for those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk are drunk at night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet, the hope of salvation. So a question to begin our study today, is sleep good or bad? Well, the answer is yes. It's both. We're going to be taking a look at how sleep can be a blessing, but then we're going to be taking a look at in the sense that Paul was using the word sleep in Romans and in the 1 Thessalonians letter, where sleep is not a good thing. So if you have your outline, we're looking at the top of the page there. Sleep can be a blessing. The word in the New Testament, translated sleep, that we read as our scripture lesson from Romans 13, there is the word hypnos. We get a word in English that comes from that. It is the word hypnosis. The difference is that the word hypnosis refers to a different kind of sleep than what the Bible is talking about. The sleep in the physical sense that the Bible refers to is something that is health-producing and something that is natural. The word hypnosis is not a good thing. And I strongly encourage all of us to not have anything to do with that. Not even go to a program where they're going to put people under hypnosis and they're going to do silly things, make people laugh. It's not a good thing. When a person is under hypnosis, they are essentially giving their mind to someone else, and it weakens the power of the mind to make decisions. But that is the origin of the word that is in the New Testament. And what a miracle sleep is. When you think about it, sleep is that act. How does it happen that the brain has the ability to kind of shut down, go into a different mode, and you're still continuing your basic necessary needs as breathing and so on, but nevertheless, it's different when you're in sleep. But during that time, the body has the capability to do some restorative, some repair work, some organization, and scientists tell us that there's a part of sleep. There are different phases in sleep, but there's that rapid eye movement, the REM sleep, that is very important, and they say that's when dreams occur and so on. So sleep is a blessing. When you were younger, when I was younger, maybe we fought against that. We didn't want to go to bed. We didn't want to stay up late. But somehow as life goes on, the blessing of sleep becomes more and more appreciated. The Bible mentions in several different passages the benefit of physical sleep. We're going to read these passages here. I lay down and slept, I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. Now some of these passages, try to put yourself back into the time of David or the other authors that are writing this. Security was not quite the same thing. I know that things are not 100% safe today, and bad things can happen even when you have doors and locks on them and you're asleep at night. But nevertheless, back then, it wasn't quite as nice even as we have it today. So to be able to go to sleep and become unconscious and not be afraid that somebody was going to break in or an enemy was going to come in, but have your trust in the Lord, as our children's story brought out so beautifully. That was a very, very great part of the blessing. I lay down and slept, I woke, the Lord sustained me. The next one, I will both lie down in peace and sleep. For you, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. It is vain for you to rise early and sit up late to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he gives his beloved sleep. Sometimes, certain points of our life, we have difficulty in sleeping, and we lay down, and it takes a long time to get to go to sleep. But when we do, what a blessing! And what a blessing it is when we can just lay down and instantly fall asleep. I used to be that way. I could sleep anywhere and anytime, whether it was on a plane or in a car or whatever. It's not quite that way, but I still enjoy the blessing of sleep. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. Yes, you will lie down and your sleep will be sweet. Proverbs 3:24. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. It's true that physical exercise makes sleep come on a little bit easier, and it is sweet, as the wise men said. Jeremiah's testimony, after this I awoke, I looked around, my sleep was sweet to me. Interesting that 3 different times the Bible talks about this rest of physical sleep as being sweet. So sleep is a blessing. At the same time, we recognize that sleep is used in the Bible as a metaphor for death. When the Bible talks about death, it presents 2 different phases or 2 different applications. What we call the first death, the death that comes upon all people as a result of sin coming into this world, whether they are righteous or wicked, unless the Lord comes, at some point we will all pass from this life's existence. We will fall asleep in the language of the Bible. That is not the one to be dreaded necessarily. Not that it's a good thing, but it is not the one that we really want to avoid at all costs. That the Bible calls the second death. That, as we were discussing in our Sabbath school this morning, that is the death from which there is no resurrection. That's the death that we don't have to experience because Jesus died on the cross and took it for us. But the first death is called sleep in the Bible. How many times? Do you think it calls death sleep 10 times? Raise your hand if you think it's that many. How about 20 times? 30 times? How many times does the Bible call death sleep? 40 times? 50 times? 54 times. 54 times the Bible calls death sleep. By the way, I've prepared a little article on this, and I've written down every single passage in the Bible where death is referred to as sleep. And if you would like a copy of that, I'd be happy to forward it to you. Just send me a request, mentonepastor@gmail.com, and refer to the sleep of death document. I'd be happy to forward it to you. And that document, we also talk about some of the other passages in the Bible that deal with this, some of the ones that are somewhat challenging. So let me know if you would like that file, mentonepastor@gmail.com, and the sleep of death. 54 times, though, the Bible calls the first death sleep. Why is that? Well, it's because when we go to sleep, first of all, we expect that we'll wake up in the morning, that it's not the final end. When we are asleep soundly, we're not aware of things that are happening around us, and we're not really conscious of the passage of time. I know this is true. I'll wake up maybe in the middle of the night, and I'll try to guess, without looking at the clock, what time is it? And almost always I'm way off, because we lose track of the ability to measure time when we're in a deep sleep. In the same way, when a person falls asleep in Christ, they're not aware of what's going on. They have nothing more to do with what happens on this planet. And time is not a factor for them. They're in an unconscious state. And so it will be that the first person who ever died on this planet, Abel, when Christ comes and wakes him up, it will be to him as if the last thing he knew was when he passed away. In an instant, so to speak, as far as his consciousness is concerned, he will be awakened. So the Bible calls death asleep. Job 14, man lies down and does not rise till the heavens are no more. They will not awake nor be roused from their sleep. So the Bible gives us clear indication that our beloved who have fallen asleep rest unconsciously in the grave. That's why the markers are there on the tombstone that say rest in peace. It's appropriate. That's why the place that we lay our loved ones to rest is called a cemetery. Do you know the background of that word? Cemetery means sleeping place. Look it up on your online etymological dictionary. Cemetery means sleeping place. And there's good theology to that because that's exactly what the Bible is teaching us. In the story of Lazarus, of course, this comes out very clearly. Jesus said, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up. The disciples were confused. They said, well, if he's sleeping, that means he's going to get better. Then Jesus told them plainly, no, Lazarus is dead. So it's an expression that conveys the hope of the gospel, that there is a morning after, that it's not the final end. And the word sleep is used to refer to that. Now we're going to take a look at some stories in the Bible, physical sleep in the Bible in a positive setting. And the first one we have down there is Genesis 2:21. And that, of course, contains a story when Adam was put to sleep and God created Eve. What a blessing it was. The first anesthetic surgery to take place. The Lord put Adam to a deep sleep, and from a rib of his side, to show that Eve was going to be his equal, not to be trampled upon, not to rule over him, but he was put to sleep and woke up married, so to speak. I remember somebody talking about the challenges and the throes of courtship and meeting somebody and all the thrills and spills that go along with that. And they said, wouldn't it be nice if we could be like Adam and just go to sleep and wake up married? Anyway, sleep was a positive thing in Eden when Adam was put to sleep and the Lord created Eve. In Genesis 15, is the story of Abraham that was put into a deep sleep, and it had to do with the Lord confirming the covenant that he was giving to Abraham to be the father of many nations, so on. Sleep is a blessing. Jacob, what a story. He had to flee home after perpetuating that horrible deception upon his dad and upon his brother. And when he left, he was troubled. He felt that he had crossed the line, that God was no longer going to favor him, bless him. But he went to sleep, and what happened during that time that he slept? He had a dream. And in that dream, he saw a ladder. The foot of the ladder was on earth. The top of the ladder was in heaven. Angels were coming up and down on that ladder. And in the Bible, we're told very clearly that that ladder represented someone. Who was the ladder representing? Jesus. Where does it tell us that? John chapter 1. Verse 51, Jesus is the ladder, the connection between earth and heaven. And in the story of Jacob, a dream with profound meaning to say that God had not forsaken Jacob. Despite his sin, the Lord was still going to work with him. So that was a beautiful benefit as Jacob went to sleep. But we have a number of cases in the Bible. We have texts listed there where it was during a person's sleep they received either visions or dreams whereby God communicated messages to them. But what we're really thinking about today is sleep in the sense that Paul was using it when he said it's high time to wake up. Sleep in a negative sense. Now, in the strictly the physical category, we can think of sleep representing laziness that leads to poverty. That's the way that Solomon used it there in Proverbs 6. But we're thinking more particularly today about the kind of sleep in the more figurative sense, and of the necessity of being awake to know and respond appropriately to God's plan. So we're looking at a number of stories that involve what we call sleeping saints. These are stories when God's people were sleeping when they shouldn't have been, and it turned out bad. Now, the general overall passage of Scripture that kind of is the umbrella over this whole concept comes from Matthew 13, verse 25, when it says that while men slept, the enemy came in and sowed tares or weeds. In that story, Jesus is telling about a man who made a nice garden, planted his good seed in it, then came back later to find that it was filled with weeds. And the question was asked, how did this happen? And his answer was very, very profound and significant. An enemy has done this. When we're afflicted with the weeds of life and the disappointments, we need to recognize that they weren't put there by God. An enemy is the one that brought them. But it was while men slept, it says, that the enemy sowed weeds. So we're looking at a number of stories that involved sleeping when people should have been awake. And the first one that I have on the list, you'll have to have your spiritual eyeglasses on to see this one. This is the story of two women. Each of them had a baby, and during the night, one of them rolled over on her baby, and the baby died. And so while the other one was still sleeping, she grabbed her baby and put it by her side so that it appeared that the other lady was the one who lost her son. So what can we make from that story? Well, in the Bible, a woman often is used as a symbol of the church, God's people. So maybe we could look at that story through this lens. While the woman slept, a precious son was stolen. And I take from that story the sense that when we are sleeping, when we're not being awake spiritually, when we're not spending time in the Word, we're not active for God, we can lose connection with Jesus. We can lose the precious Son. This is what happened to Mary and Joseph, when they left the temple after they had gone there when Jesus was just 12 years old. They weren't paying attention. They were kind of asleep mentally. And when they left to go home, they didn't recognize that Jesus wasn't with them. And it was 3 days before they were able to reconnect again. So we need to be awake, don't we? Or we can lose our connection with Jesus. Genesis 19. Here's the story of Lot. And the angels have graciously spared him and his family by bringing them out of the city of Sodom that was going to be destroyed. But then if you read through the rest of that chapter, you read a very tragic incidents. The two daughters lost faith in how God could make things happen. And so they did something that was very wrong there. And while Lot slept, events took place that changed history. From what happened there came forth the Ammonites and the Moabites. And if you read through the Old Testament, hope you're reading your Bible through, if you read through the Old Testament, you'll find that these two people groups were plagues most often against God's people. But it all happened because of sleep. Jonah, what a story. Jonah was given a commission to go and deliver a message, a warning message, but a message of love to what people group? The Ninevites. That was the capital city, and the kingdom was known as the Assyrian kingdom. Not the Syrian, but the Assyrian kingdom. Now, the Assyrians had acquired quite a reputation in Old Testament times. They were known as the most cruel, the most merciless, the most ruthless of all peoples. When they went to war, there were no rules of engagement. And they treated the enemy with great cruelty. So when Jonah was given this message, I want you to go to Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, and give this warning in 40 days, Nineveh is going to be destroyed. What do you think went through Jonah's mind? He said, well, to himself perhaps, if I go there and I give them this message of warning, and I know that they are a very cruel, merciless people, what's going to happen to me? And then, as the story unfolds, we find out that he also had the thought, if I give the message and they repent and God doesn't go through with this, well, what am I going to look like? So for these reasons, Jonah didn't go. And instead, he went basically in the opposite direction. He got in a ship. The destination for the ship was Tarshish, which was in the area of ancient Spain. And he was trying to escape from his duty. And the Bible says that he went into the ship and then he went down into the lower holds of the ship and he fell asleep. That was another method of escape. His conscience was bothering. He knew that he should have been on the Lord's mission. He should have been responding to the Lord's call. But he physically, geographically made his escape by going in the ship and then mentally made his escape by going to sleep. But of course, the Lord wasn't ready to let Jonah not fulfill his commission so quickly, and we know what happened. But Jonah was asleep in a ship when he should have been doing God's work. I hope that's not the case for us. I hope that's not the case for Mentone Church, that the Lord has given us a commission to give the warning message of love, warning message in love to the spiritual Ninevites that are around us today. And if we don't want to do that, if we're afraid of what the response might be, we escape by one means or another. That's what we don't want to do. Judges chapter 13 and onward tell a story that's not too much different than the story of Jonah. It has to do with Samson. Everybody's heard of Samson. Even if people have never opened their Bibles, they've probably heard of Samson. You know, there was a fellow quite a number of years ago, and he had developed a company that produced shipping trunks. And he wanted to enter a slightly different field of sales. He wanted to produce luggage that people could carry, not just the big shipping trunks, but more portable devices. And so he said, "What can I name these? What brand can I put upon these that people will get the idea that these are strong and durable luggage pieces that they carry?" So he came up with a name, and it's a name that probably most of us have heard. What kind of luggage is that? Samsonite luggage. That's where that came from. He wanted a name that conveyed the idea of strength and endurance, so he called his luggage Samsonite. So Samson was the strongest man the world ever knew. And yet somebody said, even though his biceps were of steel, his backbone was of jelly. And Samson had this roller coaster ride where many times he did what he was supposed to, but so often he failed in his life journey to fulfill the commission that God had gave to him. And the story kind of comes to an end then when Delilah, who probably was a Hebrew, lulled him to sleep. And after about 4 different times of trying to coax out of him the secret of his strength, finally he divulged it to her. And then what does the Bible say? Sad, sad verses. She lulled him to sleep. The hair was cut. He awoke. He assumed that it would be as before, and he would rise and defend himself, but the strength was gone. So while men slept, the enemy sowed weeds. We can't afford to be asleep. If we're asleep spiritually, the strength that God wants to give to us will be removed and will not be able to exert a defense against the enemy. And what did they do? The first thing they did with Samson was they put out his eyes. They put out his eyes, and that's what the devil wants to do us. He wants to blind us spiritually so that we cannot know good from evil, and we fall into his traps consistently. Luke chapter 9 tells the story of the disciples when they fell asleep at Jesus' transfiguration. We don't know where this took place, but it did happen, and when it happened, Jesus was on the mount, and appearing with him were Moses and Elijah. And if you have your Bible there, look at a verse from Luke chapter 9. I want to point out one word here that is one of the most interesting words in the Bible, I believe. Luke chapter 9, verse 31, actually. Luke 9:31, it says, Moses and Elijah appeared in glory, that is, they were in glorified or immortal form, and they spoke of his, what? What's the next word there? Decease. What were they talking about? They were talking about how Jesus was going to give his life as a ransom for our sins by dying on the cross. And the word translated there is in English decease, but you might be surprised to know what is in the original. It's a word that you know, but you'd be surprised perhaps to know what that word is. Of course, you have your blue letter Bible, you can look it up, but I'll tell you anyway. They spoke of his decease, they spoke of his exodus. That's the word there. They spoke of his exodus, a word that just bursts in your mind with meaning. You know, Moses had an exodus. He had a way out. Elijah had an exodus on the chariot fire. Jesus was going to have an exodus, but it was going to be through the cross. But while that was happening, the world's greatest event is being discussed. What about the disciples? Verse 32, Peter and those that were with him were heavy with sleep. We were reading in our Sabbath school class in the book Great Controversy a week or two ago how the devil makes special effort to cause people to overwork during the week or become engaged or distracted so that when the words of life are spoken, we're heavy, our eyes are heavy with sleep. And where our mind is distracted, we're thinking about something else, and the very message that God has prepared to be delivered isn't received as it should be because our eyes are heavy with sleep. Let that not happen for us, but to be prepared to hear what God has to teach us. Matthew 26, again, the disciples are asleep in Gethsemane. In Luke 9, they were talking about Jesus' decease. Now it's ready to unfold, and Jesus is asking for their help, their encouragement by praying for him. Isn't that amazing? Jesus asked the disciples, Jesus, the Son of God, the Creator, asked the disciples, mortal created beings, pray for me. I need your prayers. I need your support. And yet, sad to say, again, their eyes were heavy with sleep. Jesus said, watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. Had they been praying as they should have been, Peter himself would not have fallen into the temptation that he did when he denied his Lord. Acts chapter 20, Eutychus fell asleep during Paul's sermon, fell out of the third-story window. Eutychus is an interesting story. His name, believe it or not, means fortunate or lucky. Where was Eutychus geographically when this happened? How was it that he fell asleep? He was what we might say, he was on the edge. He was on the edge. He was at the window there. And, the devil wants to put us on the edge rather than being right in the center of God's happenings and God's will. He wants to move us out to the edge where we're a little bit closer to his temptations. And during that sermon, Eutychus fell out of the window. We're glad to say, though, that he was raised up and was alive. Matthew 25, of course, is a story we can't eliminate as far as dealing with saints who are asleep. It was while the bridegroom tarried that all the young ladies, even the ones who were considered foolish as well as the ones who were considered wise, they all fell asleep. So we don't want to be asleep in that sense, do we? We don't want to be asleep running from God's commission or not able to perceive what's happening around us. We want to be wide awake. So on the back part of your outline here, here's the question. In the year 2020, do we see evidence that we are nearing the end? Is this coming to an end someday? There are people that tell me or ask me, they say, your church has been around for about 175 years and you've been talking about end times and that Jesus is going to come soon, but we're still here. How do we respond to that? Do we come to an agreement that we're really no closer than we were 175 years ago? And that we're not near the end, that life is going to continue on, and you might as well plan for a long future. You might as well build up that retirement account because we're going to be here another 50 years or something. Is that the way of the approach that we ought to take? Or is there evidence that we are near the end? Well, let me just review in this paragraph at the top there. What is it that our church has been trying to share? What is the message that our church has? Our church believes that this earth is a battleground, that there is an enemy, that he is out to attack God and destroy his people. He deceives people. He leads people to disobey God. That's how the story started. There was an opportunity to express loyalty to God in Eden by obeying his commandment. And there will be one final opportunity to express loyalty to God by obeying his commandments. That's what I see our church as our mission, the substance, the essence of what our church is about. Are we saved by our obedience, yes or no? Do I earn favor with God by obeying his commandments on my own? Absolutely not. What is the only way that we can receive salvation is as a gift from God through the blood of Jesus, right? Nevertheless, because we have received the gift of salvation, are we released from the obligation to obey God? No, of course not. We have an even greater motive because we have received a gift that has a value that cannot be estimated, to be able to live a life as long as God lives. Having received that gift, how can we not return loyalty and allegiance to him by obeying what he says? Does it make sense that if I persist in disobedience, that God is going to take me to heaven where sin doesn't exist? Does that make sense? No. Can God take rebellious people to heaven? No. So obedience to God is very important, not as the means of my salvation, but as the result of my salvation. Why would I not want to joyfully obey the one who has given me forgiveness of sins and the hope of eternal life? So the three angels' messages in Revelation 14 express that concept. And it is God's last appeal to planet Earth, warning that through the church, and again, we're talking about the system of the historical papacy, not the people. Through that system, though, Satan has attempted to change God's law. You can go to any website, any encyclopedia, any catechism, and find that this is true. That the church has attempted to change the Ten Commandments, removing the second commandment, changing the fourth commandment, splitting the 10th commandment. Most Christians do not know this. Most Christians don't know it. They've grown up, their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, and so on, have been in the habit of worshiping on a day that has been instituted by the church and not the Bible, and they simply do not know it. And there are many people that are worshiping on the first day of the week that are God's true people today. They just don't know. Our church has been called into existence to let people know, to remind them that there is God's law, and then there is the abridged or changed version of that that has been taught by the church, that is the Catholic Church. And we must do this in love and in courtesy and in patience, because so many people out there believe that they are truly worshiping God when they go to church on Sunday. And God accepts their worship in their ignorance. But nevertheless, the truth of God stands unchanged. And what he wrote in stone was never modified. And so our church has a specific job to do, and that is to let people know that it is important to obey God. If it was important to obey God in Eden, and if Adam and Eve had obeyed God and not eaten of the fruit, how much more important is it today that we obey God and keep all of his commandments? Well, today we see in our wonderful country, and I do appreciate our country, but we see a moral slide taking place that is a sign that we are coming near the end. 3 of the 10 commandments are being assaulted. The 6th commandment says, thou shalt not murder. Now, I realize in the King James, in the Exodus 20 version, it says kill, but the word more specifically means to murder. And the Bible tells us that we should not murder. That's a violation of his law. And yet, it brings me sadness to say this commandment is being violated by the untold millions of babies that are murdered who could be living. I know that may step on somebody's toes, but I don't apologize for it. Abortion is murder. And I think that our country has made a serious mistake by enacting laws that legalize that, even late term, even post-birth, sad to say. I'm going to read a quote here from somebody, Franklin Graham. Franklin Graham is the son of Billy Graham. Listen to what he said here. Actually, his quote has to do with something else that I want to introduce in the next part. But I think that our church should take a very firm stand on this matter of abortion. I really believe that with all my heart. I think that the time is going to come when we may be in a discussion with somebody and they may point out that Seventh-day Adventists are very much focused on the 4th commandment, but what about the 6th? And I don't want to have to respond in a way that would be unfaithful to God's word. You can read the Bible very carefully and find out that life begins before birth. Jeremiah is a good place to start, chapter 1. So that's one area. The 7th commandment that defines the principles of intimacy in marriage has been attacked. I don't have to tell you this. Everyone knows this. The courts of our land have ruled that marriage can be expanded beyond the lines that God put in place. This is the quote that I was going to share from Franklin Graham. He said, this has to do with after 2015, when the court made it law that same-sex marriage was now legalized in all 50 states of America. He said this, long before our government came into existence, marriage was created by one who created man and woman, Almighty God, and his decisions are not subject to review or revision by any man-made court. I pray God will spare America from his judgment, though by our actions as a nation, we give him less and less reason to do so. I agree with what he's saying there. And he went on to say, the Supreme Court of the United States has ruled today that same-sex marriage is legal in all 50 states. With all due respect to the court, it did not define marriage, and therefore it is not entitled to redefine it. I agree with that. I have a burden on my heart that those that accept what was just read there, and I applaud them, those that accept that the Holy Spirit will speak to their hearts and they will come to a recognition that just as marriage was an institution created by God even before sin, and that man has no right to tamper with it, even so, something else was created in Eden before sin. And in the same way, man does not have authority to tamper with it. What is that? The Sabbath. Those are the two things that God instituted before sin. And Franklin Graham is absolutely right that God defined it. We don't have a right to redefine it. But that same line of reasoning we should all recognize, hopefully many will, that same line of reasoning applies to the other institution that God brought forth in Eden before sin, the Holy Sabbath day. So we see a slide in our country today where morality has declined. And according to what prophecy says, the fourth commandment also will be under attack, and a copy or an image of the genuine will be mandated. That's what Revelation 13 is talking about. Now, do we see signs of that today? That's my question to you. Is it possible that things such as interest in climate change, or even what we're doing right now in the COVID era, could be instituted to initiate a pause, a rest day for the benefit of family, workers, and society? Would that surprise you to see that happening, to use one to link into the other? 5 years ago, Pope Francis promoted that very perspective in his encyclical, his letter that he sent out, given in May of that year. He strongly promoted Sunday keeping as a way to heal society and preserve the environment. There you have the paragraph if you want to look it up and read it. He argues that this cannot be the objective of countries working independently on their own, but that the entire world must work together to bring about a satisfactory resolution. The quote there, "A global consensus is essential for confronting the deeper problems which cannot be resolved by unilateral actions on the part of individual countries." Sounds very much like what we read in Revelation chapter 13. At the bottom there, I've indicated some sources where people today are beginning to express this concept that, because of what we've had to do with the shutdowns with COVID, there has been a beneficial result. We notice that the air is a little cleaner because not as many cars are driving, at least in the early months of this. And the water is purer and so on. So, no, we can't have a shutdown that brings all of the economy to its knees, but maybe we could have a modified shutdown one day a week, and we can benefit the environment, we can heal society, we can give people an opportunity to fellowship and have family time, and workers have a rest day and so on. So at the bottom of the page there, I've put down the resources of these authors that are saying things exactly like that. Here's a book, it's an article actually, If History Rhymes, written by Joseph Tortelli. And Mark Buchanan has a book called The Rest of God, Restoring Your Soul by Restoring Sabbath, but he's not talking about the seventh day of the week. He's talking about the first day of the week being that day that everyone comes together in a form of rest. Now, is it a good thing to have rest and to have fellowship and all these things? Of course it is, and that's why God instituted it in the beginning. But he established this day as the sign, the flag, the banner of his creatorship. And as Franklin Graham so eloquently pointed out, he defined it. Man doesn't have the authority to redefine it. 7 Ways to Refresh Your Sabbath, written by an author from the Catholic religion. And Losing Sabbath, somebody writing from Point Loma, Nazareth. So what is prophecy telling us? Prophecy is telling us that as our world slides into depravity, we push God away. I can't help but think that the Lord winces when he sees our courts make decisions that are contrary to what he says in his book. And as we push God away, that allows the devil more latitude to do what he wants to do, which is to bring calamities and disasters. And as this cycle progresses and conditions in the earth deteriorate, this cry for a weekly rest day and a return to our religious roots to get back to God is going to become louder and louder and louder. Right now, it's only a whisper. Right now, you can go and find 8 or 10 articles on it. But someday, as life on this planet goes on, that will become the crescendo of a choir calling out for a return to religion. The thing is, the state has authority to mandate what's in the last 6 commandments. The state has the authority to say you can't murder and you can't steal and so on. The state does not have the authority to deal with the first 4 commandments, to deal with worship, because that's a matter of conscience and how we relate to our God on an individual basis. Nevertheless, Satan is going to see to it that laws are put in place that will affect conscience, and that, surprisingly so, the first day of the week will be the focus that we should all rally around and heal the planet and preserve the environment and come together as family and fellowship. These things are happening right now. They're beginning to surface right now. It's not time for the saints to be asleep. It's time for the saints to be awake and about our job. We can't be Jonah trying to escape. We can't be Samson being led astray by a soft lullaby. We need to be awake for the Lord. That's my prayer for each one of us. Hi. Thanks so much for joining us today for our church worship service here at the Mentone Seventh-day Adventist Church. We're here to serve. So if you have a Bible question or if you have a prayer need, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our phone number is 909-492-0738. Or you can email us at office@mentonechurch.org. And if you find yourself in our area, which is in the inland area of Southern California, please come by and visit us. We would love to meet you. And in the meantime, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to click on the little bell. That way you'll receive notifications when we are live streaming. God bless. Have a great week.